All right, beginning the third and final installment of my top 15 albums of 2015 list is the lone EDM album on the list, Adventure by Madeon. I am not a connoisseur by any stretch of the word when it comes to electronic dance music, but I have a friend who is, and in my ever-expanding quest to broaden my musical horizons, I reached out to him midsummer this year and kind of said, look, what are some basic EDM albums that I should be aware of? You know, if someone asked me about metal, I'd be like, all right, Lamb of God came out. If you want to go back in time, Master of Puppets, Rain and Blood, there's some basics. You know what I mean? And he said, Worlds by Porter Robinson and this new Madeon album, Adventure. And I can't thank him enough because the amount I enjoyed this album, Adventure is one of my top 5 albums of 2015. Even though I've made it very clear that I'm not really giving an order to this list because an order would just change 2 days later, Adventure is without a doubt in the top 5. The amount of partying, drinking, and general dumb shit that I did while this album was playing alone gives it a positive association in my brain permanently. And that's not to say that this is a dumb, basic party album. It's just that these songs are so well put together and just stimulate that part of you as good EDM should that just wants to let loose. Substances or no substances. From what I gather, this kid really is the next big thing in EDM, and I'm really glad to have been along for the ride on this debut album, which has these guest appearances too, from Passion Pit, from the guy from Foster the People, from the guy from Bastille. There's a bunch of really exciting vocal performances on here as well. If you hear a song like You're On, Pay No Mind, Nonsense, or Okay, and it doesn't give you, even if you're not a partier or someone who goes out a lot, it doesn't give you that sense and create that vibe for you, I don't even understand if you have a proper set of ears. In the 6+ months that I've been listening to it, it hasn't waned a bit. It has only grown on me with time. I don't know where it sits in the EDM conversation, but I know where it sits in my conversation. I know where it sits in the average college kid conversation, and that is at the literal top of party music, especially in 2015. Next up is Pagans in Vegas by the band Metric. Their third album in a row that I have absolutely adored. I'd put them in the alternative pop, indie pop / indie rock category if we're going to be as broad as we can with their sound, which has really evolved from being a little more guitar driven to being fully pop and electronic on this last album. You have a really good mix of sounds on here, from the more subdued Celebrate and Cascades to the more upbeat tracks like The Shade and Too Bad So Sad, the latter of which were both singles. So Emily Haynes' voice, as great as it is, really has an ever-evolving platform for her to experiment on. What's especially awesome about Metric is that they're completely unapologetic in their mission to write big songs. Every song on these last 3 albums now is just aiming for stadium status, which I absolutely love, whether it's Gimme Sympathy on Fantasies, whether it's the title track of Synthetica, or whether it's most of the cuts on Pagans in Vegas, particularly The Shade, which I mentioned earlier. And seeing a bunch of these songs performed at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, where Metric opened for Imagine Dragons, really brought the vision to life for me. Aside from essentially everyone, because this is my list, I'm going to recommend Pagans Vegas in particular for fans of big arena pop with a rock edge. Next pick is Ire by Parkway Drive, the band's 5th album. Anyone who knows me knows I'm a sucker for bands that have the balls to experiment. And Ire is one of those experiments that has paid off tremendously. This is an album that really got a lot of shit when it came out because it has these like almost 80s influence, like feel good anthems, especially like Vice Grip, one of the first singles. They played Crushed, which while it has that big stomping chorus riff, it has almost like a hip hop nu metal influence in the verses. They played Bottom Feeder and Dying to Believe, which are classic metalcore. They played the aforementioned Vice Grip, and they all fit. It took the audience on a journey, and that's exactly what the 11 tracks here on Ire do. It's a ballsy album with an arc that tells a story. When was the last time you saw that in a metalcore album? I've really enjoyed cuts from albums like Deep Blue and Horizons, but for the aforementioned reasons, Ire is the band's most interesting album by far. If you're a metal band and you're gonna experiment and you're gonna take chances, you're gonna get attention. Sometimes it works out in the way that Trivium's new album Silence in the Snow worked out, where there was kind of a mixed reception. Some fans hated it, some fans loved it, but in general there were definitely some songs that didn't achieve what they wanted to achieve. Or you can get an album like Ire, where you break new ground, open yourself up to a new audience, and step up the quality of your music in the process. Next, we've got Hand.Cannot.Erase, the solo album from Porcupine Tree frontman Steven Wilson, a fucking freakish talent. Not surprisingly, it's a really intricate concept album about this woman who's living in this apartment and she dies, and for 3 years, nobody misses her. It's actually based on a real woman that Steven Wilson read about. If you choose to follow every detail of the story, it's a very rewarding experience. But on the flip side, for 95% of music listeners, the music is why you're there. And the music on Hand.Cannot.Erase is astonishing. Simpler and less involved tracks on here, like the title track or like Perfect Life, they took my mind, and they took my heart, and they took my emotions to these places that I never thought they could go. And that's what truly special music does. But then you got epic songs on here too that are equally as satisfying, like the song Home Invasion Regret No. 9, which features by far one of the best guitar solos on the album from Guthrie Govan. That's the thing, the musicianship on here is next level. We've talked about a lot of good musicians in this top 15 list. But once you get to a Steven Wilson solo album, you're in a whole nother category. Wilson and all the musicians who worked with him on this album, they just pull out all the stops. There's a fucking flute on the song Ancestral. I mean, I don't even know if I have words for it, but listen to it. Because even if you're the furthest removed from being a musician or a music snob or a music nerd, the songs and the melodies on here will keep you there. Last but not least, we have the album Blurryface by the band 21 Pilots, an absolute shoo-in for this list. You can't even categorize this thing. It's indie, it's rock, it's rap, it's pop, it's alternative rap. What makes it such an utter joy to listen to, beginning to end, is how different each song is. You have a song like We Don't Believe What's on TV, which sounds like a standard indie song. Then you have songs like Heavy Dirty Soul, which are very hip-hop influenced. You have straight-ahead pop songs like Ride, fairly local. You have an EDM influence on the song Hometown, and all of it hits. There are no misses in the entire track list. When it comes to alternative music crossing over, this band really has something, and I'm really interested to see where they go next. It's going to be really tough to beat an album like Blurryface. They're going to have to come with a different sound. If they try to make another record with just each song standing on a certain boundary of the genres that they're mixing, it's not going to work. But it certainly worked here, and we have plenty of time to celebrate before we wait for their next move. And there you have it, my top 15 albums for 2015. Another mind-blowing year for music of all genres. As I mentioned earlier, I really hope that if you're watching this and any of these albums is unfamiliar or any of these piques your interest or your curiosity, check them out. Let me know what you think. I'll be coming out with some honorable mentions in the next couple of days, so hang tight if your album wasn't on here, because there are literally hundreds of albums that could deserve inclusion in a list such as this one. Just look at all the other lists from the major magazines and you'll see. But these are my picks. These are the albums that were the soundtrack to my year, and I really hope that you guys enjoyed watching this. I hope you learned something. I hope you gained some sort of new insights into the various styles that I mentioned. Have a safe and fun New Year's Eve. Make sure not to drink yourself to death. I will see you guys in 2016, which I hope will be another stellar year for music, about which we will be sitting here and reminiscing exactly a year later with videos just like this one.